December 18, 2025. The world stands at a crossroads with uncertainty and tension dominating the global stage. Headlines flash across screens, and the date is etched into the minds of millions as a turning point in modern history. Anxiety grips the world as fears of a new world war grow. In cities across continents, people gather in public spaces, their faces illuminated by the glow of breaking news. Conversations are hushed, and the air is thick with apprehension as families, friends, and strangers alike try to make sense of the rapidly changing events. President Trump's foreign policy, marked by confrontation and unpredictability, has upended decades of diplomatic norms. His administration's approach, often described as the Trump Doctrine, has prioritized American interests above all else, frequently at the expense of long-standing alliances and multilateral agreements. Aggressive moves like a naval blockade of Venezuela have sent shockwaves through the international community. The show of military force in the Caribbean is seen by many as a direct challenge to regional stability, raising the stakes for both allies and adversaries. At home, shifting FBI resources from counterintelligence to border enforcement has left both allies and adversaries on edge. Critics argue that this reallocation weakens America's ability to detect foreign threats, while supporters claim it strengthens national security by focusing on immediate dangers at the border. International relations experts and diplomats debate fiercely on news panels and at the United Nations. Critics warn that dismantling the postal pipeline catastrophic miscalculation, blurring lines between friend and foe. The old rules of engagement seem to be fading, replaced by a new era of uncertainty. A single spark, whether in the South China Sea, where military vessels and fighter jets shadow each other in disputed waters, or Venezuela, where street protests and military alerts have become daily realities, could ignite a global conflict. The world watches, holding its breath as tensions threaten to boil over. This is why so many now look to the future with deep foreboding. The sense of unease is palpable, as ordinary people everywhere wonder what tomorrow will bring, and whether the world, as they know, it is about to change forever. China's rapid military modernization is one of the most significant developments in global security today. Over the past 2 decades, China has transformed its armed forces from a largely outdated, land-based military into a formidable, high-tech force capable of projecting power far beyond its borders. This transformation is not just about new tanks or fighter jets, it's about a comprehensive strategy to reshape the military landscape of Asia and potentially the world. As China's military strength grows, it is fundamentally reshaping the global balance of power. The world is witnessing a shift, with Beijing seeking to assert itself as a dominant force not only in Asia but on the global stage. This has led to new alliances, shifting partnerships, and a sense of uncertainty among nations that have long relied on U.S. military supremacy to maintain stability. The People's Liberation Army, or PLA, is investing heavily in cutting-edge technologies, hypersonic missiles, cyber warfare capabilities, artificial intelligence, and a rapidly expanding blue water navy. These advancements directly challenge U.S. dominance in Asia, especially in critical areas like the South China Sea and the Taiwan Strait, where control of sea lanes and airspace is vital for global trade and security. Beijing's militarization of the South China Sea, building artificial islands, deploying missile systems, and establishing military outposts, has alarmed U.S. allies such as Japan and the Philippines. At the same time, China's increasing pressure on Taiwan through military drills and political threats has heightened fears of a potential conflict that could draw in the entire region. The Taiwan Strait has become one of the world's most dangerous flashpoints. Chinese warships and fighter jets regularly cross the median line, testing the resolve of Taiwan's defenders and the patience of the international community. Despite calls for dialogue, Beijing refuses to rule out the use of force to achieve unification, raising the stakes for everyone involved. For the United States and its partners, the challenge is clear: how to deter Chinese aggression and reassure allies without triggering a catastrophic war. Joint military exercises, increased arms sales, and high-level defense dialogues are all part of a complex effort to maintain peace and stability in the region, even as the risk of miscalculation grows. From Beijing's perspective, the growing U.S. military presence near its shores is seen as an attempt to contain China's rise. This perception fuels a classic great power rivalry, with both sides wary of each other's intentions and preparing for the possibility of confrontation. The question now haunting defense planners around the world is this: what happens when Beijing decides it's strong enough to act? As China's military ambitions continue to grow, the world watches anxiously, hoping that competition does not spiral into conflict. The Pentagon's war simulations reveal sobering truths about a potential US-China conflict. War games show that China's long-range missiles could overwhelm US carrier groups, sinking billion-dollar ships once thought invincible. These exercises force military leaders to confront the real possibility of defeat and the need to rethink strategy. The loss of a supercarrier would be a devastating military and psychological blow. War games aren't predictions, they're warnings about the high cost of miscalculation. The race for new tactics and technology is now more urgent than ever. The specter of great power war is no longer theoretical. Hypersonic missiles, traveling over a mile per second and maneuvering unpredictably, are revolutionizing warfare. The US, Russia, and China are racing to deploy these nearly unstoppable weapons. Hypersonics compress leaders' decision time to seconds, threatening even the most secure targets. They could destabilize nuclear deterrence, creating pressure for preemptive strikes in a crisis. The US is scrambling to catch up, pouring billions into new defenses. This arms race is less visible than the Cold Wars, but just as dangerous. Hypersonics make any major power conflict exponentially more perilous. America's allies are also bracing for conflict. The sense of unease is palpable across the Western world as governments and military leaders confront a rapidly changing security landscape. The alliances that once seemed unshakable are now being tested by new threats and shifting global power dynamics. In capitals from Washington to London, officials are holding urgent meetings, reviewing contingency plans, and preparing their citizens for the possibility of a major confrontation. In the UK, military planners now speak of a war of necessity, a fight to defend core interests, not a war of choice. This phrase marks a dramatic shift in mindset. For decades, Britain's military interventions were often framed as optional, driven by humanitarian concerns or international obligations. Now the focus is on survival and the protection of national sovereignty. The stakes are higher, and the margin for error is shrinking. Cyber attacks, espionage, and Russian aggression have forced a sobering reassessment of security. British intelligence agencies are on high alert, tracking digital threats and monitoring suspicious activity around the clock. The lines between peace and war have blurred, as hostile actions increasingly take place in cyberspace and through covert operations. The threat is no longer just on distant battlefields, it's in the networks and infrastructure that underpin daily life. Across Europe, nations are boosting defense spending and readiness, shaken by the war in Ukraine. Military exercises are becoming more frequent and intense as countries seek to demonstrate their resolve and strengthen their capabilities. The conflict in Ukraine has served as a wake-up call, reminding leaders that peace cannot be taken for granted. The specter of war has returned to the continent, prompting a new era of vigilance and cooperation. The idea of preparing for unavoidable war reflects a world where old guarantees no longer hold. Treaties and alliances that once promised security now seem fragile as geopolitical rivalries intensify. There's a growing recognition that nations must be ready to stand alone if necessary, relying on their own strength and resilience. The uncertainty of the future is driving a fundamental reassessment of what it means to be secure. These preparations aim to deter conflict, but also raise the risk of rapid escalation. As militaries mobilize and tensions rise, the possibility of misunderstandings or accidents increases. Leaders must balance the need for readiness with the responsibility to avoid unnecessary provocation. The world stands on a knife's edge, where a single miscalculation could have devastating consequences. The optimism of the post-Cold War era has faded. In its place is a new realism, shaped by the challenges of a more dangerous and unpredictable world. For Britain and its allies, the war of necessity is not just a military concept, it's a reflection of the urgent need to adapt, to prepare, and to defend the values and freedoms that are now under threat. The threat of global conflict is magnified by Russia, North Korea, and Iran. Russia's invasion of Ukraine and hybrid warfare tactics have shattered European security. North Korea's nuclear arsenal and missile tests keep Northeast Asia on edge, risking catastrophic miscalculation. Iran's regional proxies and nuclear ambitions threaten to ignite a wider Middle East war. These states create multiple fronts, stretching Western resources and attention. The world is forced to be on guard everywhere, all at once. The convergence of these threats has made the risk of major war a defining issue of our time. A great power conflict would trigger global economic collapse and unimaginable human suffering. Governments are making contingency plans once thought unthinkable. Yet, calls for peace and diplomacy are growing louder as activists and citizens urge leaders to step back from the brink. Shared challenges, climate change, pandemics, inequality, demand cooperation, not confrontation. The future isn't written. Wise leadership and diplomacy can still avert disaster. The world stands at a crossroads, war or a renewed effort for peace. The choice is ours.